In this session, we will review once again how Codex standards are initiated. New work may be proposed by any member of the Codex Alimentarius Commission, preferably within the committee where that new Codex text or the new Codex standard, guideline, or code of practice would be developed. Generally, new work gets analyzed through the development of a discussion paper that includes a review of the relevance of this new work against the criteria for the establishment of work priorities. This would lead to the development of a project document. The project document is the basis of the discussion that generally takes place first at the Codex Committee, where the work has been suggested to start, then at the Executive Committee level or CC Exec to envisage such new work. The discussion that takes place at the Executive Committee is what we call the critical review. Once the critical review is carried out and a favorable recommendation is obtained from the Executive Committee, then supported by an agreement at the Commission level, the step process may start. Let us now discuss again the criteria to establish work priorities. The criteria against which the justification of new work is made includes a number of considerations. First, the consideration that the new text is very much in line with the Codex mandate, meaning the protection of consumers' health and enabling fair practices in the food trade. Second, whether the new work is really trying to address an issue of importance at the global level or at the regional level for regional standards and texts. The idea is, of course, not to start new work in the form of a proposed solution where the problem is not considered of importance. Third is to ensure that this work does not duplicate work done by another international standardization forum. And if there is an overlap with the work of another international standardization forum, then it is important to consider leveraging the work done by these forums. The rationale is that sometimes a Codex standard is in fact needed even if other standardization bodies at the international level have been working on the same issue, because of the nature of Codex and its inclusive character. If this was in fact the case, it is important to consider taking stock of the work already done and leverage its results. The fourth consideration includes the importance to consider that any new work will be addressing commodities that have an importance in the international trade, meaning that the volume of products traded is considered important enough and that the standard that the Codex text will be addressing will therefore be useful to alleviate potential hurdles in international trade. Fifth, it is important to analyze the trade problems that the proposed text would address and the possible trade barriers that it would help alleviate. The project document is the basis of the analysis of the relevance and importance of any new work under Codex. And this is in fact carried out under the process that we call the critical review. The project document must contain information that presents the new work and offers all the justifications needed for its relevance and importance. Project document must contain paragraphs that speak to the purpose and the scope of the standard, the relevance of the standard and its timelines, meaning that this is the right time for its development, the main aspects that the standard intends to cover, Then follows an attempt to assess the proposal in the document itself against the criteria of the critical review, meaning the criteria to establish new work priorities. We also need to have information on the possible relationship between the proposed new work and any other texts that have been developed previously and adopted by Codex. The document needs to identify whether scientific advice is needed and whether it has been made available through the advisory bodies reporting to Codex. The document also should mention if any additional support may be needed from external bodies such as ISO, AOAC, or any other international standardization organization. The way this new work would help serve the objectives of Codex and align with the strategic plan of Codex underway needs also to be addressed in the project document. Finally, a proposed timeline needs to be offered as to the way Codex and its subsidiary bodies or body will intend to complete the work, with a proposed date for the possible adoption of the standard or text by the Commission. The critical review is an important task conducted by the Codex Executive Committee on behalf of Codex, and where advice is developed for the Commission. It is through this critical review that new work gets proposed and examined. The revision of standards also gets considered here, and one of the important criteria to be looked at for this phase is whether the proposed work addresses the priorities of developing countries. The critical review also examines whether a new subsidiary body needs to be convened, in particular an ad hoc intergovernmental task force or even a new committee, their creation, their adjournment, and their possible dissolution if required. The reliance on scientific advice also gets discussed and is generally prioritized as part of this process. Once the critical review is complete and is favorable, the Commission would review the recommendation made by CC Exec and would support the start of the new work under the leadership of the committee that proposed it. New work would then begin following the STEP process.